Welcome everyone to a brand new episode. It's my first time going live, so please be kind, be gentle, right? Um, Hopefully, everyone can hear me and see me good. Welcome to a brand new episode here at the Liberty Report. I'm your host, Bobby Bones, and if you don't know, now you know, right? um, so I wanted to go over Trump's proposal to set credit cards at 10%. Now, oh, awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that, Julie, that you can hear me. Um, so look, let me introduce myself first before I get going. So, like I said, my name is Bobby Bones. I was born in New York. Right now, I live in South Carolina, and I deal mainly in finance and economics, but I do cover current events and look. If you are a student of history, you know that when Trump is in office, I mean, anything can happen at any moment. And I could tell you from experience that with Trump, you can literally write a story, right? Put it together, and then the next thing you know, it gets blown out because he'll do something so maybe over the top or outrageous that then you have to kind of cover it or you're late to the party, right? But I want to go over something that really got missed by a lot of people in the media, including the financial media. And that is Trump's proposal to go after the credit card companies and charge no and have them cap their interest at 10%. Now, first, we have to understand that that would be completely unconstitutional, right? The Constitution does not give the executive branch the power to uh, cap credit card. What a credit card company can charge you, right? And second thing that I want to point out, right, because I promote a lot of freedom, individual liberty, right? You have control of your body and your autonomy, right? When you go to work, I want you to be able to keep the fruits of your labor, right? I don't believe in government, uh, being allowed to come in and just steal your money and give it to your lazy neighbor or somebody else, right? If you want to give to your neighbor, right, that should be for you to give, right? Not for the government to pick your pocket, right? And then forcefully put it towards things that you don't want, right? Like all these foreign wars and stuff, right? But in a free society, right, people should be allowed, right, to loan money, right, and borrow money without government getting involved, right? Now, I understand that some state, that states have usury laws and this sort of thing, but the fact of the matter is, we have rights, right? And the purpose of the Constitution wasn't to limit the rights of free individuals. The purpose of the Constitution was to limit the rights of government, right? And to see Americans who preach, uh, freedom and liberty, and they wave the flag and all this, supporting a powerful government, right? That can sit there and crush you and steal your property, right? And do almost anything to you with almost completely unchecked. That is not a free society, right? A free society is for a man and a woman, right, to do what they wish to do as long as they are not infringing on the rights of others, right? And if I uh, borrow money from a credit card company, right, and I accept a 20% interest or a 25% interest, right, that is between me and the credit card company, right? I don't need the government to protect me from getting that type of interest. Hey, how you doing, Amy? Welcome to my first live stream. I appreciate you. I'm popping my cherry. This is like going all the way for me. And let me tell everybody, it took me 1 year to be able to go live, right? It took me 1 year literally of, I can't even express the amount of energy, time, resources I have put in just to get to this point, right? This level. And let me tell you, I believe that freedom is infectious, right? As a matter of fact, it just, again, I have to kind of keep giving a little bit of backstory to people who might be surfing the internet and catch this stream for the first time. You know, I'm involved in politics, right? And I believe in party candidates. And so in my local elections, which I highly recommend everybody to vote in your local elections, right? Let me tell you something. Your local representative can do more damage to your community, okay, than somebody in the White House or somebody in Congress. Now, that's not to say you shouldn't vote in national elections, but you should definitely help put through good candidates on the local level, right? You got to vote in your primary, right? You got to get people who want to protect your liberties, right? And not steal them away. And the fact of the matter is, us as free Americans, we should be allowed to borrow money from whoever we want, right? I don't need government to protect me from the credit card companies, right? Now think about this. What happens is, if I have let's just say Trump puts in this 10% cap on credit cards. Let's say somehow he waves a magic wand and makes that happen. There's a few things that are going to happen. Well, first thing that's going to happen is that people who have 20%, 22%, 28% interest rates, okay, the first thing that's going to happen is the credit card companies are going to drop those people, right? Nobody is going to get a free ride. So the first thing we have to recognize is that once you limit what the credit cards companies can do, the banks, then what happens is they're going to react to that. And the first reaction that they're going to get is to kick the people off who do have the higher rates. Now, we have to understand, why do some people get a high credit card interest rate, and why do other people get a low interest credit card rate? Well, for one, some people have bad credit history, right? They don't pay their bills on time, right? And so what happens is, the people with good credit, just like in insurance, right? In insurance, if you have a good driving record, but yet your rate keeps going up, it's because you're paying for the bad drivers, right? You are subsidizing in that program the bad drivers. Same thing with credit cards. When you take out a credit card, right? You apply for a credit card, you get one. It's the people who pay on time, the people with zero balances, that end up paying for the people who don't pay for their credit cards, right? So that's how that happens. So you have to think, in a free market, credit cards compete for your business, right? And if there was a better deal out there, right? People aren't stupid, right? They would get the better deal, right? But when you eliminate the deal, the one deal that they can get, 20, 22, 25%, then what happens is, now they got to go through other sources of credit. They'll go to buy here, pay here's, right? They might go to a loan shark, right? Government's job is to protect our rights, like from scams, right? So let's say if I'm going to deal with a bank, and the bank, let's say, writes up a contract and it's a scam, right? And this has happened before. You know, I tell the story how Bank of America said that I died and they froze my account. I mean, then I found out that they opened up another account. I put this on Facebook when it happened. And they also created other accounts in my name. Okay. Look, that's where government's supposed to step in and protect you, right? When there's scams out there, right? People are scamming you, right? That's where the government facilitates protecting you. Let me see if there's any questions out there. Wait, let me see. I have to remember to keep looking at the stream. Mm, yeah, Discovery. Yeah, yeah. Well, again, look, I have a couple of cards, and I don't really pay interest because the cards that I have, if you pay it off, there's basically no interest. And again, it's the people that do pay that make up for the people who don't pay. Now, I personally don't like taking out loans. I like living as debt free as possible, and I try to teach younger people to live debt free, right? Because when you take out a loan, right, you are destroying uh, the future productivity, right? Your future productivity, right? So I try to tell people, try not to take out loans unless it's like a business loan or something like that. Um, and you got to be careful, right? Like, so for instance, the government's always trying to juice the economy, like with mortgages, right? Oh, we're now going to give you a 50-year loan, right? Again, you don't want to be, basically a slave to your home, right? If it's going to take you 50 years to pay the thing off, right? Makes no sense getting it. Just like for somebody like me, I don't want a credit card that's 28% interest. So you know what? I won't take that card. I'm going to take the best deal that I can, which tells you that people who can't get good credit, who can't get a good interest rate, right? They're going to get the best deal they can get. And if you take away the best deal that they can get, then they'll go to the black market, right? They'll go to loan sharks, right? They'll go to those buy here, pay here's, right? And have their um car taken. A lot of these title loans and stuff like this. Now people are taking out loans for DoorDash. I mean, it's completely ridiculous. And the people who will be affected the most if Trump puts in a cap on 10% will be the very people who are hurting the most. And that's the people with bad and low credit, right? Um, Now, another thing that I want to bring up regarding this, which is frustrating for the Republican Party, because again, as a libertarian myself, I lean conservative when it comes to fiscal conservatism, right? When it comes to budgets and spending and the size of government, right? I lean Republican, right? When on those issues. And when Harris ran for president, and yes, she would have been a complete disaster. Let's just be honest about it. She would have been a complete disaster if she had won. But, when Harris ran, if everybody remembers, she was going to go after the grocery stores. She said the same thing. Oh, she talked about price controls and the greedy grocery stores. And Trump is doing the same thing with the credit cards. Who else recently just complained about prices in their campaign? It was Mamdani. Mamdani just, he went after the greedy landlords. Oh, you can't raise the rent, right? So Mamdani wants to control the rents in New York, right? And that's no difference between Harris, Mamdani, or Trump, right? Because in all three cases, you have people who think that they know what the right is. They're going to set the price. They're going to set the terms instead of the free market setting the terms. So now you go to another issue, because a big issue that I usually get is they'll say, "But Bobby, we're in a capitalist society now, and what prices are still high." And I would bounce back and say, "This is not capitalism. What we have right now, right? What we have right now is big government, big regulations, right? If you dared, let's just say, if me and all of us came together and tried to start a bank, the regulatory hurdles we would have to go over and through would destroy us. It would literally put us all in the poorhouse. And the reason for that is because of government, right? Government has made banking so expensive in this country, right? And all of these policies, whether politicians, they're going to protect you and all of this, all adds to the cost of doing business. That's right, Amy. I couldn't agree with you more. It really is. It's all about big business. And that's the thing that's so frustrating with Trump is that it's literally big business again, big business as usual, right? Um, he proudly goes out there and marches around with the CEOs and has them in the White House, and they're constantly giving him gifts and constantly um, getting favors from the White House. And you know, and again, I don't like, I was trying to explain to somebody that the term, and this all goes back to education, and that's why I wanted to start doing this channel, was to teach people about economics and to teach them about freedom, liberty, the Constitution, right? And one word that Democrats like to throw around regarding Trump, and is a tough word, it's called fascism. Now, people who are older, right? People who think of fascism tend to think of the Nazis, right? They think of the Nazis. Well, what was the Nazi Party? The Nazi Party, they weren't a conservative party. They were the Nationalist Socialist Party, right? That's what they were. Now, being a fascist has nothing to do with being a Nazi, right? Those are two totally separate things. Fascism, by definition, is basically the government and corporations in bed together. So that's when you think of fascism, that's what you have to think about. Government and corporations together, right? When government wants to control the means of production, or they try to curry favor for the corporation. Let me give you an example. When you have the president going out and going around the world trying to sell Boeing, right? Trying to sell jets, right? That is a form of fascism, right? Another form of fascism is having a president force you to buy medical, right? Obamacare, the American, what is it? The I forget what it's called. The ACA, the Affordable Cares Act, which is Obamacare. What that does is it has the government in bed with the insurance companies, right? Because all it is a big slush fund, right? It basically steals from one group of people to help subsidize another group of people, right? Socialism. So I just gave an example of Trump and Obama, right? Both being fascists. That's exactly what fascism is. And in a capitalist society, right, the way the founders set the country up was to protect our rights, right? To protect us from the government stopping us from doing business or living our lives, right? If I want to invest in Boeing, right, I'll do that, right? But I don't need the government in bed with Boeing, just like I don't need the government in bed with the medical insurance companies, because they are. And that's why when you have lobbyists and all these people buying politicians in DC. And so fascism is running wild in our government. It is within both parties. And the thing about third party candidates or libertarians is that we can't be bought, right? Our whole thing is that, we don't favor the corporations over the individual. In the way we look at things, right? We look at the individual as number one, right? So nothing supersedes your individual rights. as long as you're living your life, as long as you're not infringing on the rights of others to live freely, right? We don't want government to harass you or punish you, right? Credit cards at 10%. How does that affect me? If let's say my credit card is 27% normally. Yes, actually, yes. See, that was my point that I was making earlier, was that maybe I should slow down too and calm it down. I got so excited from going on live. So, and welcome everybody who just jumped in. So, let's say you have a credit card that is 27%, like the person in the chat put, and Trump demands, "Hey, I'm the king now. I'm going to say you can't charge more than 10%." So what happens to your credit card, right? Well, what's going to happen is you're going to get a letter in the mail that says that they're going to discontinue your card, right? Because again, if the credit card companies could give you 10%, just hear me out on this, everybody listening. Some credit card company would have already offered you 10%, right? That's the way banking works, right? Like when you go out with an auto loan, right? When you go for an auto loan or a mortgage, it's the same thing. When you go out to take out a loan, because that's what a credit card is, it's a loan, people will shop for the best deal. Now, some people will get the first card they can get because they have bad credit, right? So anybody who will give them a card, they'll take. But most people, right, will shop around for the best deal, right? Maybe one card will give extra points, one will do this and that, right? So if you accepted a card for 27% interest, let's say, chances are nobody out there was willing to give you a card for less, which means if Trump is able to knock credit cards to 10%, you're going to lose your credit. Now, what do you do if you have a family and you have a credit card, maybe you're on Social Security or something, and you have that card as maybe you don't use it often, but maybe it's for an emergency. Hey, my water heater broke, God forbid if I have a leaky roof or something, right? You have something you can count on, right? What happens if you lose that card? Well, guess what? You got to find somebody else to loan you money. And I promise you, the deals you're going to find are going to be much worse. You know why? Because what happens is when you shrink the market, because that's what Trump is doing, he's shrinking the credit card market on who can get credit. What happens is there's less options. When you have more demand and less options, prices go up. They don't go down. And that's what I don't understand about Trump. He owned many businesses, right? Now, maybe this explains why a bunch of them failed, because he took out a bunch of credit and, he went bankrupt several times. And maybe, look, let me put it like this. I know why Trump proposed 10% credit card interest rates. He proposed it because he knows it is a good talking point, right? The people are going to love it. Hey, he's going to lower my interest rate. But what those people don't understand is they're going to lose their credit. So I hope that made sense. Oh, you're welcome. I appreciate that. Yeah. So look, so I hope that and this is my point, right? When I try to, again, I'm not attacking Trump per se. I'm not attacking Republicans per se, and I'm not attacking Democrats per se. Okay. I'm an independent, I'm a libertarian, right? So I'm very honest about that. But I want to show how both parties are basically the same, right? Because you got Mamdani trying to do the same thing in New York on rent, right? He's going to give you free buses, right? He's going to go after those greedy landlords, right? And make sure that they don't charge too much, right? He's going to cap rents. What's the difference if you cap the rent or cap the interest rate? There's no difference. Just like when Kamala 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 Harris wanted to cap grocery prices. It's all fascism. It's all socialism. It's all, the main word is really central planning, right? And so we have to ask ourselves a question. Are we better off? Now, people who have lived, we're a little bit more mature, right? So I really want to talk to people who have lived a little longer, right? As the decades go on and government gets bigger, bigger, and bigger and more in your lives, are you really better off? Right? Think about when Nixon, if there's anybody out there who's been around when Nixon was out there, and if anybody remembers, we had a gas crisis, a gas shortage. And what Nixon did was he put in price controls on gas. You know, even days, odd days, I remember, right? You had the even and odd days, right? And what happened? Gas prices spiked. Lots of people went without gas. Cars were breaking down on the road, right? And it was Nixon's centralized policies that created that disaster, right? Taking us off the gold standard, right? Expanding into Vietnam, spending all this money on the war on drugs, the war on poverty, right? I mean, we were spending money like it was nothing. And look at us now. Now, it's crazy because Trump just, I just seen that we got a Venezuelan ship. Apparently they gave us a ship of oil and it's worth $500 million if we sell it. And I seen a lot of people cheering, look, we got this oil and it's worth $500 million. But what the people don't see is in the past 2 weeks, because I've shown this on a last episode that I've done, is that in 2 weeks, our government blew through $62 billion, okay, in new deficit spending. Now, mind you, deficit spending is not all of government spending. So if we have $62 billion in deficit spending, that means we've probably spent nearly $100 billion in just 2 weeks, right? So this government, under full Republican control, mind you, this is supposed to be conservatives, are blowing through cash faster than the Fed can print it. And so it's important to highlight that regardless which party that you are going to go with, it doesn't matter if you're going to vote for the Democrat, it doesn't matter if you're going to vote for the Republican. The differences are negligible at this point. If you're talking about fiscal conservatism, right, trying to live within your means or a budget, you don't have much difference between either party. If you're talking about war, right, war with other countries, I did an episode a couple of episodes ago where I showed George Bush putting Venezuela on the axis of evil. And you still, all those decades later, 25 years later, Republicans and Democrats have been beating a war drum against the Venezuelan government, right? And so both parties went into they went into Vietnam, they went into Panama, they overturned multiple governments in South America. We have destroyed Iraq, Syria. As a matter of fact, I just looked at a list. Trump has bombed 7 countries since being president. Several countries he has bombed. Anybody can go look it up. I was shocked when I read that because he was supposed to be the peace president, right? He was supposed to stop regime change wars. He was supposed to be the conservative that Kamala Harris wasn't, right? Remember, Harris was for price controls on groceries. Well, now you have Trump doing price controls on credit cards. And this is not what people voted for. And that is why I just seen a poll. Matter of fact, Amy sent me a poll, and I seen another one where young people, I seen three polls actually in the past 2 days, where young people are leaving both parties. And they're leaving both parties because they see what the prior generations have done. They see the game. And maybe it's because of the internet, right? Because when we were younger, right, we didn't have the internet or access to this much information, but they're not falling for it. And so my goal is to help educate some of these kids so they don't fall into socialism, right? That they fall into free markets, individual liberty, right? Sound economic policies. Let me see here what some of the people are saying. Thank you. This is my first live stream. I appreciate everybody. How is this fair? Yeah. Well, nationwide registries. Look, if you have good credit history, then you're going to get a low rate, right? So if you're getting a high rate, it's because either you're not established yet or because you have a bad credit history. But people who pay their balance, pay it on time, right? People who keep their balances down, they're not going to get a high rate. Trump never thinks. Let me see. Amy wrote. Yeah, that's right, Amy. I agree with you. You're not attacking anybody. You're telling the truth. Thank you so much for saying that, Amy. Some people, when I say certain things like, you know, eh, people, the sad part is, people have become so partisan. They have just, if you give a point of view that somebody doesn't agree with, they'll attack you. And that's why I try to explain to people, look, if you're a Republican or if you're a Democrat, you are not my enemy, right? Especially if you're like joining me on the stream and you're like interested in what I'm saying, maybe we can learn something from each other, right? That's how I look at it. But here's how I look at it as well. If you learn something new, maybe you're going to hear something on this stream that you're not going to hear on CNN, Fox News, right? Then I implore everybody to please subscribe and stick with somebody like me because I'm going to give the truth because again, nobody owns me. I don't have any sponsors, nobody. I am a self-funded guy. I am literally uh I want to donate my time to try and educate people and help people to understand what's coming down in the future because what's coming in the future is not good. And I want to give economic information that can help people. I look at it kind of like the Titanic going down, and I'm trying to help with a lifeboat, and so I don't play the partisan game either way. I call it like it is. If I think Trump does something good, I'll say it. And if I think a Democrat does something good, I'll say it. It's rare, but I promise I will always be honest about that. They're both crooks. That's true. I agree with Jamie. They are crooks. But what was I going to say? I had something here I wrote down. And the thing about central planners is that the thing that I object the most, especially from a free market perspective, right? So if you think of capitalism, right, I want you to think about the ability for individuals to set prices. So let's say somebody wants to sell a car, right? And somebody wants to buy a car. And let's say there are 3 people bidding to buy that car, right? Government should not be in the middle of finding the price, right? Because what the seller will do is sellers will always try to sell their product at the best price for them. The buyers will always try to buy something at the best price for them, right? So there's a tug of war, right, between the two things. And the best part about a free market and capitalism is that capitalism allows for abundance, right? And the reason why you have abundance with capitalism is because it allows people to start a business, right? To produce goods, right? And they don't have to uh answer to the government, right? Because it's the government that gums up the system, right? If you ever try to start a business in this country, it is harder than it is in China. It is a lot harder than in South Korea, right? It is a lot harder than in India, right? By the time you get done with all the rules and regulations and taxation, right? And then you have employment laws, right? If you try to hire somebody, right? You have all these employment laws and everything. And let me tell you, the credit card industry has some of the worst regulations on the planet. I mean, ever since you have the Patriot Act that was passed after George Bush, right? Voted in by both parties, right? Uh, Banking has become exponentially expensive. And this is part of the problem with banking. You know, the banks, they have the government looking over their shoulder. The banks are looking at you. Everybody's looking at everybody. And every time you add a regulation, just think of that as a price, right? Because if I run a business and I have a ton of regulations, let me give you an example. When I had my brokerage firm in New York, it took me 1 year just to hire one person. It took 1 year to get through all the regulations and things and da 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 da. You know, if I tried to start that business now, there'd be no way, right? It would be impossible, right? Because there are just that many more rules and regulations, right? It would cost $1 million probably just to hire one guy, right? That is not good. That's why it is hard in America to compete with other countries. And when you listen to a socialist or you listen to these central planners who think that they know what's best, right? They're going to come in like Elizabeth Warren. She's going to protect you, right? From the big bad banks. What she's doing is she is making banking so expensive that there's a lot of people that can't even get bank accounts, right? There are people, they not only can't get credit, they can't get bank accounts. You protected them out of the market. So what happens to a young person or an elderly person who can't bank or can't get credit, right? They start doing other means to get it. And those means are sometimes worse, way worse, sometimes physically worse, right? To the individual, right? And so, yeah, that's right. Yeah, we are definitely worse off. Whenever government gets involved, right? It is always worse off. But let me see. So anyway, I'm going to let me just take a look here. See, yeah, I went over all this. Oh, the last thing I want to go over regarding the credit cards, I just remembered now that this is why I write stuff down. So another thing to think about credit cards. So I don't know if anybody out there knows people who file bankruptcy, right? I do have friends that did this. So I'm going to explain to you why you have to have high interest rates for some people for high risk. So the thing about a credit card, which is different than an auto loan or a home loan, is the fact that credit cards are unsecured. So what that means is, so let's say I don't pay my car payment, right? I have a car, it's got a payment, and I don't make the payment. What happens is the bank can repo the car. And then the bank takes the car, they auction it and sell it, right? And then they could go after the owner, the previous owner, for the difference of that car. Just like if you have a mortgage, right? If you have a mortgage, if you default, the bank forecloses, then they sell the home, right? And then if there's a balance, they're going to go after you. Well, chances are there won't be a balance, but they're going to take the house. So with credit cards, I can go out, rack up 50, 60, $70,000 in credit card debt. Big TVs, stereos, I can get all sorts of stuff with my credit card. And guess what? I cannot pay it. And guess what? Nobody's going to come and take the stuff. And that happens all the time, right? People file bankruptcy. I know a couple that are from Long Island. They bought a brand new home. They had a business. One worked for Lexus of Massapequa. One had a construction business. Nice people. And they racked up a bunch of credit cards, right? Big TVs and all this, right? Back when you had big entertainment centers, right? Bought all this stuff, filled the house full of stuff, and then filed bankruptcy. And guess what? They got to keep all the stuff. Now, the cars they had to tow away, right? They repoed the cars, but the stuff, there had to be at least back then. We're talking back in like 2002. They must have had at least $60,000 worth of stuff. I mean, at least, right? And guess what? Nobody took it. And this is why credit cards are expensive, is because there are so many people out there who will, hey, if you know you're going to go bankrupt and you have credit cards, people will rack up the cards knowing, hey, if I go bankrupt, I'm not going to be able to get credit for a couple of years. Hey, why not have a party? This is what people do. So I wanted to go over that because that's an important distinction between credit cards and other types of debt, and why the credit card companies charge so much to people who are a high risk of doing stuff like that. But anyway, I want to thank everybody for tuning in here to the Patriot Report. Right now, as you see, I'm not in my normal studio. I tried to set this up in my regular studio, and it wouldn't work out. So I'm going to do both in my studio and lives every week. So my goal is to do a live every Thursday. That's my goal. And if there's something that I think is important, I might jump on and just go do a live now that I can. So this gives me a little bit more flexibility than I had before. But I cannot thank everybody who subscribed to me and liked my videos and commented and helped me get to this point. I cannot thank you guys enough. You guys are the absolute best. And I promise, as I say in every video, I will always stand up for liberty, freedom, sound economic principles, and of course, you guys, the American people. I love you guys, and I hope that you guys love me too, right? And I'll talk to you guys later. Have a great night. Thank you, and God bless.